Hello, evaluating your research materials. So what I'm going to tell you here, or show you here, or explain is how you as an individual are going to critically evaluate the research you have conducted, i.e. your websites you have used, the authors that have written the articles you have read, the journals you have read, the books you have read. We need to be able to critically evaluate if they're reliable, if they're relevant, if there's any bias, what the authors have written about. Is it true? Are they credible? So we're going to discuss all of this throughout this PowerPoint. Okay, so here's just a little picture that kind of is showing you how to get enlightened with critical thinking. So what you need to talk about: is there an agenda? Is there a bias? Disinformation, appearance versus reality, being aware of old data, the whole picture. So this is just kind of like a little picture for you to start getting your brains working in terms of critically evaluating the sources that you're using. So applied thinking skills can make the difference between a good and an excellent project. This is really the deep finer things with regards to your project, being able to critically evaluate. So from the mark scheme for top band marks, a thorough understanding of the complexities of the question has been shown. Learners have placed the question into the wider context of the research area. These are actually from the mark scheme. Okay, so counter arguments or alternative interpretations are considered carefully and systematically in a discussion. There is a clear and well developed conclusion. Okay, and then we've also got a well thought out and well argued explanation of the decisions taken. So with regards to critical thinking, it is about that questioning the research you have done. So again, from the mark scheme, the presentation is clearly and logically structured. The learner makes use of the distinction between fact, speculation, and subjective opinion in evaluating the reliability of sources, and does this consistently and effectively. We'll talk about speculations, subjectivity, and objectivity later on in this screencast. Sources, bias, and evidence. You need to evaluate your sources and justify the use of them. The best way is to use the footnotes, as I've spoken about in a previous screencast, because they're not included in the word count. And then you also need to say how and why your sources are actually reliable. Now here's just a way for you to remember kind of judging sources with Raven. Okay, so reputation, the reputation of the author, the actual article, journal, newspaper you're reading. For example, the reputation of the Sun is not exactly fantastic. Therefore, using the Sun as a source of information is not really reliable. Okay, ability to witness, vested interest, expertise, and neutrality or bias. Now, cool, clever people should decide critically. This is just the things you need to look for within your article research papers. Is there any corroboration? Okay, so is there any testimony that supports the article that you've written or read? Sorry, so is there anything else like that actually supports what this person has said? Okay, conflict. Primary sources. So primary sources usually are people who experience the event or issue, actually have first-hand experience, or actually have done an investigation themselves. And secondary is information that is created later by someone else who has read or researched the points in case. So for example, you guys are doing a secondary literature review. Sorry, I lost my head there. So you guys are doing a secondary literature review essentially. You have got secondary sources of information where they're created later by someone who did not experience firsthand or participate in the events or conditions being researched. The purpose of a research project, secondary sources, generally scholarly books and articles. You are essentially creating a secondary source literature review in terms of you are not doing any investigations or creating anything yourself. You are looking at other people's research and articles, and then you're coming to your own conclusions. So, what do you look for in a website, in an article, in a newspaper, in a book? Reputation of the author, the publication, the organisation, the intended audience, so who's actually written for. The date is really important. If it's dated 1970s, 80s, 90s, it'd be classed as old, so therefore potentially not reliable. Use of data, the evidence they've used, Always cross-reference information you find to look to corroborate or challenge what is being said. Now, this here is really useful. Okay, so first of all, with regards to critically thinking, when you're looking at your sources, first of all, what does the material contain? So is it accurate? So we've got this reliability here. Which extent is information credible and accurate? You need to ensure that your sources are credible. You can't just Google something and then just click on the first article and think, yeah, this website will do. You don't know if the article you're reading have any fact checkers or editors. This is why journals are really good to use, and textbooks as well are quite useful. But the problem with textbooks is that they're very much outdated. By the time a textbook comes out, it takes years to publicate them, that all of a sudden it's out of date. Relevance, how relevant or useful is the material for your needs, which topics are covered and in what depth. References, which other sources have been cited in the work material. Is it scholarly text or popular science? Scholarly is better. Target audience, who is the intended audience? Then you've got who is communicating the information. The author is key. Okay, is the author well known in the field of the research? Does the author have academic legitimacy? Has the author been published before? Is there any way to contact the author? In short, what's the author's qualifications? If you are researching something in particular and the author is just someone who has no qualifications whatsoever, how do you know they're reliable? How do you know that they're not just making things up? Data, etc. You don't. Why has the material been published? So what is the purpose of the material or the document? Is it to inform, present research? Okay, you've got to think, is information presented there to create a bias? And then when was material produced? As I said earlier on, when was the text written? Is the material enough for your topically? Is the publication or web page dated, updated? If the data is included, it may have various meanings: date first created, date placed on the web, or date last revised, i.e. people update their text regularly. So these are all important things to consider when we're critically evaluating. You can't just say this person says this, so they're right. You can say, however, this person said this. However, their credibility could be questioned because they work for this organisation. Now, this organisation are actually involved in this, therefore they're going to promote this. However, they don't have any real qualifications to talk about this. It's just they solely work for this company who are trying to push this agenda. So they have a bias there. So it's really important you can do that with regards to your work. So when we're talking about objective, subjective and speculation, these are just some examples. Okay, so this is objective. Many people are worried about possible problems arising from genetic engineering. That is objective statement. There is data out there that has people saying, yes, I'm concerned, no, I'm not concerned. You have got objective data. It is there, it is true, it is in front of you, it is statistical. Another one is, a gene is a segment of DNA that provides the genetic information to produce a protein. We know that research has been conducted and we know that that is the case. That is objective. This is speculative. Genetic engineering will have a very important role in the future in feeding the world. That is pure speculation. We can't look into the future to decide that that is true. That is a speculative statement there. Someone has just speculated that is potentially what could happen. And then, I don't like the idea of genetic engineering, it feels weird, is subjective statement. That is that person's opinion. My opinion is subjective, okay? Your opinion is subjective with regards to how you feel about something. Objective would be actual statistical data and statistical research that says this is this. Okay, so objective is statistical data that we have proof of. Speculative is making an assumption in terms of what would happen in the future, and subjective is the way you feel about something. So using and judging evidence. 1, what explanation has the author used for the evidence? What significance has the author given the evidence? Has the evidence got other possible significance or meaning? Is the evidence sufficient for the author to use it in the way they do? So this is something you need to look out for when you're reading the articles that you are reading. Questions to ask of the evidence. This part's important. Is there a causal relationship? Are there other factors involved? How big is the sample? So this how big is the sample? If you're only doing your work on 4 people, It's not very reliable, really, when you're trying to say, this is what people think. Well, you've only asked 4 people. Your sample, the bigger the sample size, the better. The more people you ask, the more people that are involved in the investigation or the research, the more accurate it's going to be, the more reliable the research is going to be. Is there any counter evidence or examples? Are these unusual circumstances? So these are the kind of questions you need to be asking yourself. And if you type that into the internet, obviously you can't take it from the screencast, but if you type that into your screencast, so this is the perfect example of bad use of evidence. Okay, so the MMR vaccine case. So if you look at this, it's an infamous case where the use of evidence was seriously flawed and incorrect. Okay, so it is really, so this is a good idea to get an idea of misinformation or poor information. You have to think really in terms of reliability. Journal articles are reliable sources. They're usually up to date. They're usually by credible sources. Textbooks are reliable, however, can be outdated, so aren't the best. But you can use textbooks for definitions, etc. Because definitions don't change. When the first definition was coming up with something, it could have been in the 70s. We still use it to this day. Okay, because that's the definition for its textbooks to find out. Websites, be careful of the author. Make sure you understand or realise if the website is a legitimate website or if it's just a fan website where it's just speculative information given from someone or subjective information. So hopefully that will help you. Again, if you have any information or have any queries or questions, please do not hesitate to ask me and I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you. Bye.